Welcome back, dear listeners. The midnight clock seems to be in a better mood today, but let's not test its patience. Monday morning I got a call to go look at a roof of a house about an hour outside of the city. The lady was a widow living alone in her family home and had called a local charity asking for help with their leaking roof. They reached out to us and we offered to take it on if it wasn't too much work. So I jumped in my pickup truck and headed out to see what needed to be done. Like most of these old farmhouses, she was the only one for miles. At one point her family owned a large potato farm, but the land was sold off over the years and now there wasn't much activity in the area. The house itself was rough looking. The wooden siding was rotting off, some of the windows were broken, and the front door was secured with scrap lumber. I remember thinking, this poor lady can't have much. Farming isn't what it used to be, and she probably didn't have much in the way of savings. But this is what we do. We'll patch the roof up and do some other odd jobs, get a little good press out of it, and keep the family business in the good books of the general public for another year. Every window was covered in heavy blankets. It took her about 20 minutes to answer the door. While I waited, I looked around the yard. I remember seeing a couple old trucks in the field and an outbuilding in the back. I remember how quiet it was. No wind, no birds, just silence. I even remember telling myself that this sort of peacefulness must be nice. I stepped back to view the roof and suddenly had a loud ringing in my ears. I figured it must be coming from the electrical entrance to the house. Maybe the box was loose and humming. I didn't get a chance to check. The side door opened up and she told me to hurry inside. I assumed she didn't want to let the heat out of the house, but that was not the case. Inside was worse than outside. There were holes in the drywall, doors boarded shut, piles of junk and garbage everywhere. I asked her if she was okay and she said yes, as long as they stay away. Really, my job started and ended with the roof, but I couldn't leave her without offering some sort of help. Her hair was matted and her face was dirty. She clearly wasn't well. I hesitated, but I asked her who she was talking about. Now this part isn't word for word, but it's as good as I can remember. At this point I was getting worried for my own safety and wanted to get as much information as I could, then get out of there. She said, "They live in the building out back, 4 of them. Every night they come in and harass me, torment me. They shine lights in my windows and shake the house so I can't even sleep. They open my windows and scream. I cover myself in soot from the wood stove to hide from them." 4 people living in an outbuilding on an old farm isn't the most insane thing I've ever heard, but I figured this was all in her head. I kept my cool and offered to have a look around outside. I told her if I saw anyone, I'd make them leave. I had no idea if this would help or not, but I wanted out of that house and I needed a way to do so without causing her to panic. She agreed, but told me to give her time to lock herself in her room. She was scared if I failed they'd come after her. I agreed, so I went to my truck to grab my flashlight and go look around. While walking to my truck, I heard that high-pitched ringing sound again, coming from the same place. A few steps either way and it was gone, but if I stood exactly the right spot, I could hear it. I made it to the truck and opened the door. I grabbed my flashlight next to the pistol I keep tucked under the dash. My dad made me keep it with me, even though I didn't think it was a very good idea to carry it on the job. But maybe he was right, better safe than sorry. Tucked the pistol and the flashlight into my pocket and headed towards the backyard. I stopped at the rear of the house and surveyed the field. It hadn't snowed for weeks, so any footprints would be visible. I didn't see anything, no sign of movement from the building at all. So I started down the path toward the building. The silence was abruptly broken by screams from the house. "Don't go closer! They'll see you! Run! Don't go in there!" I was halfway between the house and the building when I heard the sound of a door opening, followed by the crunching of snow. Suddenly, I couldn't understand where I was anymore. I heard footsteps all around me, and I still didn't know if they were mine or someone else's. This part gets really fuzzy. I knew I had to make it back to my truck, and I wanted to get the pistol out of my pocket, but my hands wouldn't do what I wanted them to do. I remember being on the ground in the snow and hearing dogs barking. They sounded like they were right on top of me. I remember her voice yelling, "No, don't take him! He's not one of you! He just wants to help me!" The next thing I remember, I was holding onto the bumper of my truck. The ringing in my ears was back. The dogs had stopped barking, but I could hear heavy, slow footsteps in the snow all around me. I felt like I was asleep and struggling to wake up. The footsteps got closer and I started hearing screams and then laughter. I managed to get up, but I couldn't see straight. My limbs were heavy and I was confused. The screaming, footsteps, and ringing all got louder and louder as I tried to open the truck door. The next thing I remember, I was driving down the road back into town, about 4 miles from my house. I don't remember getting in the truck or leaving the house. I had an awful headache, and my tools, pistol, and flashlight were all in the passenger seat. I didn't stop driving until I got back to my house. I sat in the truck for hours thinking about what had happened. What was I going to tell people? If I was going to tell anyone? I finally worked up the energy to go inside. I glanced in the rearview mirror. I had a cross drawn on my forehead in soot. I knew I had to tell someone, and I did. And now I'm being asked to share my experience with you all. These are the accounts of the events as I remember them. I am aware that according to the phone records and the office records, I went to the wrong house. I am also aware that the police were unable to make contact with anyone in the house I believed I'd gone to. I understand that this may seem strange to you. However, I'd like you to consider how strange it seems to me. I'd like help finding answers. The clock gave an enthusiastic tick this time as it started back up. I believe we did a good job. Good night, everyone.